Big 12 Radio, watched on the Big 12 Fast Channel, Big 12 Studios. Alongside Ari Timken, I'm James Westling. Sean Walker covers BYU and the Big 12 in Utah Valley for KSL Sports. Sean joins us now. Hey, Sean, what's up?
Guys, thanks so much for having me on. I know there's a lot of basketball news out right now, and I'm trying to enjoy the spring sports season as much as possible. But you both and I both know that we're all just counting down the days until football season, right?
Yeah, we're 110 days away now from the start of the season. You
But who's
guys have
counting?
Yeah, not that we're counting.
love your Big 12 football post-spring rankings. We can start there. Probably the biggest surprise to me is that you guys have Utah still in the top three with Whittingham gone and all of the turnover. So take us through your rankings and why you guys like Utah so much.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just kind of consistency and returning talent. I mean, this is a Utah team that I know they've got the coaching turnover. Obviously, Kyle Whittingham moving on after what feels like a bajillion years in his time on the Hill. I think it was only like 27, but who's counting again, right? But this is still a team that's kind of led by its defense and offensive line play, and I don't think that's expected to change too much under Morgan Scalley up in Salt Lake City. Like I think continuity has always been kind of Utah's sort of secret weapon in a lot of ways. Now they got to replace four or five starters on the offensive line. They rotated a decent amount last year, so that'll help some. But they they bring back not one but two starting quarterbacks with starting experience. Devin Dampier and Bert Ficklin are both back. Wayshawn Parker's back in the backfield. I think there's a lot more consistency at Utah than a lot of people maybe are giving them credit for in Morgan Scalley's first year. And so that's where I think sort of a lot of us were kind of going was that consistency should lead a first time head coach like Morgan Scalley into about as much success as you can hope for, especially at a place like Utah. Now, obviously, if that offensive line kind of reintroduction goes south, then that number could change, right? And that's why preseason rankings are worth about as much as the ink that they're printed on, or digitally, I guess in this case. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot more consistency at Utah than maybe a lot of people are giving them credit for, despite the fact that the head ball coach is now in Ann Arbor and doing a lot of things over there.
All right, can we talk a little NBA draft with you?
I mean, if you want to go to the NBA draft, sure, why not?
Yeah.
I think some BYU guy is a little bit involved towards the top of the draft, allegedly. So I've heard. I guess I can't remember his name though. Nobody seems to be talking about him too much.
Yeah, him or the Utah Jazz, of course, the hometown NBA team. And so the fit is, obviously extremely uncanny because he went to high school there and now college. So does DeBonsa end up lasting until the second pick?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question on the streets of Salt Lake City right now. I don't think there's any chance that he falls below that, certainly, as long as the Utah Jazz are right there. Because you got to think that Ryan Smith, a BYU alum who also owns the Jazz, heavily involved in that BYU men's basketball program, would love nothing more than to grab a player like AJ DeBonsa. And let's be real, like a lot of teams in the NBA would love a talent like AJ DeBonsa. I don't think he's going to fall certainly very far. He's a potential number one pick, though. Washington could definitely use him. Pairing with a guy like Trey Young, that seems like a pretty good connection right there. So now I think sort of the question is, do the Jazz stand pat at number two and kind of hope that a player like DeBonsa that you can build around for years, both for the local reasons of being the BYU kid that you can kind of build around, as well as that unbelievable talent? And do they kind of hope that maybe something happens with Washington? Maybe they go a different direction. Darren Peterson, I know Cam Boozer from Duke's been talked about a little bit in that spot. A couple of other guys, or do they try to make a trade and move up a spot, see if Washington's willing to kind of work with them to get the number one pick, make sure they can go get a guy like AJ? And is that worth giving up whatever assets you got to give up to keep AJ quote unquote home? He's from Brockton, Massachusetts, but you mentioned it. He
Right.
he finished his high school career down the street in at Utah Prep and Hurricane Utah. Obviously, that 1 year at BYU and that sort of thing. And so yeah, like I think with the way the NBA draft lottery fell out, though, there is no chance AJ Debonsa falls past number two in the draft. Like I don't think it happens.
No way.
A lot of people think he's the number one pick, obviously. If for whatever reason he's not, he's going number two to Utah. Like I don't think there's any chance that anything else happens now at this point.
Yeah, Sean, can you give us a sense for what it's like in that state or in that area in terms of how connected the Jazz fans are with DeBonsa and BYU? Like, are Jazz fans freaking out about having a chance to grab him, thinking they should make a trade to definitely land him at number one? What's the pulse there in Salt Lake City?
Yeah, it kind of depends on who you ask, really. There's a little bit of a polarization with AJ DeBonsa right now, and by polarization, I don't necessarily mean over him as a player or him as a talent, right? Like everybody agrees he's this amazing talent, generational in a lot of ways. But Utah Jazz fans are an interesting bunch. It's a combination. I joke around here all the time that there's a reason why one of their main colors, arguably, is purple. And that's because when you take red and you take blue, you combine them together, you get a little bit of this purple hue. It's a very 50-50 split of Utah fans and BYU fans. Obviously, the BYU fans would love nothing more than to be able to watch AJ DeBonsa on a rookie deal at the Delta Center in Salt Lake City. There is a group of Utah fans that are kind of like, okay, is this becoming a little bit of like a chase BYU guys too much? We mentioned the Ryan Smith connection, and all that BYU alum. So there is a little bit of kind of that polarization of like, do we want this to happen, or do you maybe go almost purposefully try to go another direction? But again, a load of great talent. Like this is an awesome draft class. I think if you're picking anywhere in the top five, six, maybe even eight picks, you have a chance of really grabbing a program defining or franchise defining player in this 2026 draft class. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's all local basketball fans that are like all in on wanting or needing or feeling this overwhelming desire to bring AJ DeBonsa to the Utah Jazz. There is a little bit of kind of question marks of sort of sustainability and maybe pressure. What do you do with a guy who has been coming up through this Utah system, and Utah meaning the state of Utah system, for the last couple of years? Does that put a little bit of extra pressure on him to succeed right away? And how does he sort of handle that pressure? I don't think there's any problem with a player like AJ. He's handled pressure every step of the way, but I definitely understand sort of where sort of that 50-50 split comes in, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I mean, put this in context for BYU basketball. To have, at worst, the number 2 pick in this draft, Yegor Demon was, 11 in last year's draft, had a huge rookie year. They've got another guy coming in next year who could be in the conversation for top 5, and who knows how much he can ascend. Just put this in context for, I think, BYU basketball in general.
Yeah, it's uncharted territory. It really is. It would be only the second or third time I think in BYU basketball history that they've had the number 2 pick. First since Sean Bradley went number 2 back in the day. They've never had a number 1 overall NBA draft pick. So if he winds up going number 1, whether it's the Wizards or the Jazz or anybody who makes a trade with Washington there, it would literally be unprecedented. It's something that has never happened in BYU basketball, and something that Kevin Young, when he came in a couple of years, essentially made a promise of he's going to bring in talent, he's going to develop talent, and he's going to get that talent to the NBA, and they're going to be higher draft picks than I think a lot of people in and around the program at the time really kind of thought what was possible. Kevin Young, when it comes to producing NBA guys, and I realize this is a little weird to sound going into only the third year of his tenure, but he's already starting to make do on, at the very least, that end of his promise. He came from the NBA, longtime Phoenix Suns assistant and associate head coach. He knows how to develop players from his time in the G League as well. He knows what it takes to get to that level. Now I think the next question is how much can he win while doing that at a place like BYU. But in terms of development, in terms of producing draft picks, I think he's already starting to make good on a lot of those promises that, quite frankly, there's probably a section of the BYU fan base that didn't necessarily believe him just because BYU hasn't necessarily been sort of an NBA factory like that, a draft pick factory. It's only every couple of years that they get a draft pick at all, and those are usually like late first, second round type guys. This is, I mean, what he's doing, what he's building in BYU is unlike pretty much anything I think that BYU basketball has ever seen.
Sean Walker joins us from the Utah Valley, writes for KSL Sports, the NBA Draft Lottery, the Wizards #1, the Jazz #2. So if the Jazz, if they don't land DeBonsa, is it Darren Peterson? And then my follow-up, I wanted to ask you about Ace Bailey, their top 5 pick last year. Like, how did he work out? Because he was super polarizing as well, kind of like Peterson for different reasons. He was declining workout invites. He declined to work out with the Jazz, and they drafted him anyways.
Yeah, and I think that shows that Ryan Smith, Danny Ainge, now Austin Ainge coming in there in that front office, don't necessarily care about some of that stuff. If they identify a talent and they really like a talent, they're probably going to figure out a way to take that talent. And Ace in his camp, to his credit, pretty quickly when he got to Utah, was upfront about just wanting, he's a guy that just wants to hoop. He wants to play ball. He wanted to get to the NBA. The Jazz made him feel super welcomed, and he fit into that system and that culture and that locker room pretty quickly. Wound up being a full-time starter, a near full-time starter by the end of the year when he was healthy. And other things, I guess we can get into what is or isn't tanking if you guys really want to, but that's not necessarily my expertise or my cup of tea. But yeah, so I mean, Ace kind of jumped into that Jazz system and he fit in really well alongside Keontae George, Lauri Markkanen, again when he was healthy and or not resting, Walker Kessler when he was healthy and or not resting, Jaren Jackson Jr. when he came over. And that's why I think a lot of Jazz fans are excited about the prospects of AJ, because he's a guy that can kind of fit into that system. Whether you want to go big or you want to go small, he sort of plays similarly to an Ace Bailey or maybe like a little bit of a smaller Lauri Markkanen, where he's got sort of that versatility to play multiple spots. If he does wind up coming in, Ace is probably maybe the guy that gets impacted or changed the most. Maybe he's coming off the bench a little bit more. Again, the NBA season's a long one, so I don't want to like necessarily pencil anybody in as a full-time starter. I think you do need some lineup versatility and some rotation and that kind of thing. But Ace Bailey as a potential kind of changing his role could be a potential like 6 man of the year type player where he's just this instant offense and can really get things going for the Jazz. So he's probably the guy that maybe stands not necessarily to lose or gain anything the most, but for his role with this Jazz team to change the most with a guy like AJ.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then, Sean, the last thing, want to pivot back to the KSL Sports Big 12 football post-spring power rankings. You guys still have Texas Tech #1 and BYU #2. So explain the breakdown there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just I think Joey McGuire and that group with Cody Campbell and those who are running that Texas Tech football program, both officially and unofficially, if you will, have just kind of proven themselves over the last year that they're going to do whatever it takes to win. I know all the questions around Brendan Sorsby, and first and foremost, just on a personal level, you hope that a guy like that can kind of get some help with the addiction recovery that he's going through, the gambling addiction and everything. I think that's first and foremost. So I know there are a lot of questions around Brendan Sorsby. With him at quarterback, I don't think there's a question. Texas Tech is the best team in the Big 12 and one of the better teams in the country right now. I understand the questions that come from that. But this is also a Texas Tech team that was led by its defense last year. I think the defense should be pretty good this year. And by the way, they do still have this guy named Will Hammond, right? You remember what he did during his, I guess, limited starts and limited availability last year. When Will Hammond's back with Texas Tech, I think they're going to be a very good team as well with a very good quarterback in there. Obviously, the question is how quickly can he come back and recover from that ACL injury that he had a year ago. But once he's back, I think this Texas Tech team is kind of able to fire on all cylinders and everything. It's just that question. And then with BYU, I think BYU is probably sort of their next kind of their next biggest challenger, just because of, similar to Utah, that continuity pace. It's continuity, but on steroids. Bear Bogmeyer back for a sophomore season is a big deal. Barring a sophomore slump, he should be better than last year, which is kind of scary to think. If you really think about it, LJ Martin's back. He's the reigning Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. They lost some guys, but Jack Kelly goes off to the NFL draft, and they replace him with an All-ACC linebacker in Kedu Luave. Falatal Satuwala and Evan Johnson are back to lead that secondary. Carson Ryan gets selected by the Browns in the latter stages of the NFL draft, and they just go out and randomly get a tight end out of USC, and then another local kid, Roger Saliaponga, out of Orem. So from the transfer portal. So I think BYU did a really nice job of kind of seeing the few holes that they had this year and targeting some high school recruits and transfer portal recruits in particular to fill in a lot of those slots. They've got a little bit more of a hole at wide receiver with some late departures. Obviously, Chase Roberts is gone. He's in minicamp right now with the Las Vegas Raiders, and then the Parker Kingston issue as well, leaving the team several weeks ago. But they got a guy from Oregon and Kyler Casper, who a lot of people expect to step in. And Fesi Sitake, if there's anybody who deserves the benefit of the doubt, it's probably Fesi Sitake, the wide receivers coach, who's done a nice job of kind of churning out talent at that wide receiver position that even those close to the program don't necessarily notice until they're about ready to break out. So I think this BYU team has everything in the makings to be just as good as they were last year, even under a first-year defensive coordinator in Kelly Papinga, and probably right up there with Texas Tech as well.
Yeah, they don't play each other in the regular season, so that helps. Sean Walker,
Certainly.
BYU reporter covering the Big 12 for KSL Sports. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate your time. Have a great day.
No, thank you guys. 100 and whatever more days. Who's counting again, though, right?
110. 110 days. We'll see you, Sean. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Sean Walker, KSL Sports, joining us here on Big 12 today. Coming up next, we've got to tell you about a series we're super excited to dive into. The Road to Arlington starts now. Just some initial thoughts on potential players, games, dark horse contenders in the Big 12 for the upcoming football season that is 110 days away. And then Kat Osterman, ESPN analyst and the general manager of the Texas Vaults, the softball legend, will break down Arizona State's shocking upset win over Texas Tech at the Big 12 softball tournament. That's still to come here on Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, exclusively on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.